The headline, former WSDOT economist accuses state leaders of retaliation for refusing to lie about gas prices. This segment is presented in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. So this is a guy named Scott Smith, and his job was to forecast where gas prices would be. And he says, and he's been doing this for 35 years, this has been his job. This is his area of expertise. And at the beginning of 2023, what did he predict? Well, he predicted, again, his area of expertise, that the cap and trade program would raise gas prices 45 to 50 cents a gallon. And what happened? Gas prices went up about 50 cents a gallon. But he says, and I'll play a clip from this King 5 report, he says that he felt so much pressure to lie, to leave that estimate out of his official reports, that eventually he just gave up and resigned.
I wouldn't do it because it just wasn't right. I've never had anyone tell me to jimmy the numbers, to come up with some artificial number. I was obligated as part of my duties to produce forecast of fuel. So I had nowhere to escape, nowhere to hide. And I had to, I guess for lack of a better term, walk the plank. I've been damaged. I'm 64 years old. I've got nowhere to go.
So here's this guy, didn't want to leave his job, was not ready to leave his job, but felt he made a decision I'm sure was hard, the morally correct decision. They wanted him to lie. He wouldn't. He left rather than lie. He left his job and his career with the state of Washington rather than lie. And he's filed a claim against the state. Has this been proven in a court of law? No. But Susanna Frame, who's one of the most respected investigative reporters in the country, felt that there was enough credibility to the story that he was telling to do a report on it. I find it frankly shameful how the governor's communication staff has responded to this, basically saying that King 5 is just not doing its due diligence. And, that's the second time in one of these reports that Susanna Frame has done about Inslee and lack of transparency or outright concealment on climate issues, where the governor's office has tried to make it about her credibility. Her credibility is unquestioned. And that's not political. In fact, I would argue that King 5 is one of the more left-leaning TV stations in Seattle and in Washington state. This isn't coming from some, enemy of the governor. This is coming from King 5 News, the King 5 investigators, and again, one of the longest-serving, most trusted investigative reporters in the entire country. And that kind of shows you when you're over the radar as a journalist, when you've got the subject of your story, the governor's office, trying to make it about you, trying to make it about your credibility. I would also say one of the reasons why this economist's story sounds credible to me is that, again, this is a pattern of behavior. This is a pattern of lies. This is a pattern of gaslighting. This is a pattern of actively concealing information, hiding information from you and I. And think about what they're hiding information about. Something as important as whether you can afford to get to and from work, whether you can afford to bring your kids to and from school. Lying about something that is deeply impacting so many families in Washington state. And why? Because the governor wants his policy, but he doesn't want to own the consequences of the policy. And when I talk about this pattern of lies and concealment and gaslighting, it is very long. You think back to when the carbon tax was being debated, and the governor's office hates it when I call it a carbon tax. But the cap and trade program directly results in increased gas prices, which to me is a tax on Washingtonians. So I will call it a carbon tax, whether the governor's office wants me to or not. But you think about when this policy was being debated. What did the governor say?
They're not going to see much higher gas prices, maybe even lower than they are today. This is going to have minimal impact, if any. Pennies. We're talking about pennies.
Just pennies. Now, when the carbon tax finally went into effect on the 1st of this year, and immediately gas prices shot up, and it was undeniable that there was a correlation to the carbon tax, what did the governor do then? Well, he went on the news and he tried to find other things to blame it on.
Now, much of it is not related to this law because the oil companies have shut down a major pipeline, allegedly for maintenance, although why they do it in the summer, I don't know. That has restrained supply, and that has been a significant reason for these recent cost increases. It's not all this law. They're padding their pockets with this, and that's what's outrageous. They haven't just increased their numbers because of the cap and trade, which, by the way, have always been high in the Northwest because we are kind of an island of supply.
You can't get away with lying about it once it's obvious for everyone. So, okay, now this led to increases. Well, let's tell everybody that it was made worse by a pipeline closure. People aren't buying that. Okay, let's tell everyone, oh, what do Democrats love? They love to blame, big greedy companies, so let's blame it on greedy gas and oil. But the problem is, the more that you lie, the more you spin, the more you conceal, the more people are left wondering, if the policy is so good, why do you have to lie about it? If the policy is the right thing to do for the state, why do you have to lie about it? And that isn't the only narrative where the state has tried to hide the impacts of that program. You'll remember what I still think is one of the biggest scandals politically that I've covered in the state in more than a decade. When Puget Sound Energy went to the State Utilities and Transportation Commission and said, hey, because of the carbon tax, we got to tell people that their rates are going up 3%. And Puget Sound Energy wanted to put it as a line item on your bill so you knew why your bills were going up, why it was getting more expensive to heat your home. And what did the State Utilities and Transportation Commission do? Washington AG's office advised Utilities Commission to conceal carbon tax impact on energy rates. So you've got the lies initially from the governor's office that a program designed to increase gas prices wouldn't increase gas prices. You have allegedly the resignation of a state economist whose job was to forecast gas prices, who said he was asked, he was told to lie about it, left his job rather than lie to you about the impact this would have on your pocketbook. You have Governor Jay Inslee, who proceeds to come up with various lies about the reason gas prices were increasing so significantly. You have the State Utilities and Transportation Commission acting on the advice of the Attorney General's office, telling Puget Sound Energy to hide the reason for their rate increases. It is a pattern of lies. It is a pattern of concealment. In my eyes, it is a pattern of government misconduct that cannot be ignored, no matter what side of the political aisle that you're on. These lies impact you. These lies are about something as important as your family's budget, as important as your family's ability to make ends meet. When is enough enough? I know that we have a year left of Governor Jay Inslee, and that's it, and he's not running for another term. But I would argue that one of the reasons he believes that he can get away consistently with this level of deceit is because not because he's been the governor for 3 terms and he's not running again, but because of the one-party infrastructure that has been built up around him. When there is one party in control for so long, one party in control of the governor's office for 40 years, one party in control of the House and the Senate in the state for 8 legislative sessions in a row, and for most of the legislative sessions of the past 20 years, there is a level of arrogance there where he feels like Teflon. They feel like they can lie, they can deceive, they can conceal from the people who they're supposed to serve. That is the danger of one-party rule. That is why I'm so hard on Democrats. Because there is nothing that they can't get away with. And with Governor Inslee, it goes beyond just the impacts of the Climate Commitment Act. Remember, we told you the other Susanna Frame story with King 5, where the governor set all these climate goals. And at the beginning of his time in office, he announced this wonderful website that would track those goals and that would let the public know if they were meeting those goals. Fast forward 11 years, they haven't met any of them. Recycling's down, carbon emissions are up, and the website the governor introduced to such fanfare, the accountability structure, that website was basically scraped of any mention of the goals, so that it made it more difficult for people to track them. So again, it's a pattern here. And your question as a Washingtonian, whether you are right, left, or center, is, are you okay with the pattern? Are you okay with the evidence that shows and proves the pattern? And if not, then what are you going to do about it? That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. And I know they have a lot of opportunities to get involved and try to push back against things like this that aren't good for any of us.